Hey everyone, let's jump right into this. Welcome to today's explainer, where we're unpacking some seriously valuable insights from tech educator Anand Vemula, all about mastering Microsoft Azure certifications. Now, picture this for a second. You're suddenly handed the keys to a live Azure enterprise environment. If that thought makes you break into a cold sweat, well, you are absolutely not alone. There is a massive difference between having a kind of vague idea of what Azure is and actually having the validated, proven skills to build, manage, and secure it in the real world. So today, we're going to break down exactly how you bridge that terrifying gap. Here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We're going to start with the Azure Cloud opportunity, then we'll navigate the Azure certifications landscape, tackle the preparation challenge, look at the practice question advantage, and finish up with the real-world career benefits. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the Azure Cloud opportunity, and exactly why we're seeing this crazy growing demand. It seems like organizations across literally every industry are hitting the gas on their digital transformation, and that's making Microsoft Azure one of the absolute biggest cloud platforms on the planet. But here's the catch. Companies don't just need people who have, casually clicked around the dashboard a few times. Whether you're an IT pro, a software developer, a solution architect, a security specialist, or a cloud engineer, having that official Azure certification has become an incredibly valuable credential. There's a pretty funny but very real difference between putting used Azure once on your resume and having a certification that screams, I actually know what I'm doing. It's basically a direct key to unlocking career growth and real industry recognition. Moving right along to Section 2, navigating Azure certifications, specifically looking at the different levels and specializations out there. Microsoft actually makes this pretty straightforward by organizing the certifications based on your exact role. So, beginners, you'll ground yourselves with the AZ900. That covers all the essential cloud concepts, pricing models, governance, things like that. But as you specialize, those tracks diverge pretty sharply. For the administrators who are managing these cloud environments day to day, the AZ104 is your target. That's heavy on resource management, networking, and monitoring. Developers, you're going to want the AZ204 so you can dive deep into cloud-native apps, APIs, and serverless computing. And for the security pros out there, the AZ500 is entirely dedicated to mastering security controls, identity management, and threat protection. The big takeaway here is this: don't just take any random exam. Surgically target the certification that perfectly aligns with your daily reality. And beyond those core paths, we definitely have to mention the advanced tracks. For solution architects, the expectations are way, way higher. These advanced certifications focus on massive enterprise-level cloud design, complex scalability, business continuity, and hybrid solutions. Basically, this track is all about designing the overarching architecture that the administrators and the developers are eventually going to build and maintain. Which brings us to Section 3, the preparation challenge, and why we desperately need to bridge this gap. So this is where things get real. We need to talk about the immense friction candidates face. Azure services evolve insanely fast, and the exam objectives cover this massive web of interconnected technologies. If you're relying purely on theoretical learning, just reading Microsoft's documentation, passively binge-watching training videos, or relying on simple memorization, well, it's kind of like trying to build a house just by looking at a picture of one. It simply will not cut it. The real exams demand practical application. They're going to throw these complex scenario-based questions at you that require active, on-the-fly critical thinking. If you only know the theory, you're just going to freeze when they ask you to apply it to a simulated real-world problem. And that leaves us with a pretty massive question. How exactly do you bridge that gap between just knowing the theory and actually surviving the exam? Well, the answer is right here in Section 4, the practice question advantage, and taking a look at the Toolkit advantage. Anand Vemula really hits the nail on the head regarding the philosophy we're talking about here. He states, and I want to emphasize this because it's so important, success requires more than reading documentation. It demands practical understanding, exam-focused preparation, and extensive practice with realistic questions. That right there is the entire thesis of his book, The Azure Certification Toolkit. Critical thinking and active practice absolutely must replace passive reading if you actually want to pass. The reason this toolkit is such a game changer is that it actually grows with your career, giving you broad coverage across multiple Azure certification paths. But here's the absolute best part. It doesn't just feed you the correct options and move on. It gives you detailed explanations for every single answer so you actually learn the why behind the what. When you combine that kind of deep conceptual understanding with real-world complexity and varying difficulty levels, you don't just have a test bank, you have a complete learning companion. Here's how all of this builds into a complete active learning process.
By exposing yourself to the exact diverse question types you'll see on test day, you immediately spot your knowledge gaps way before the real exam exposes them for you. Once you spot a weakness, you can understand the underlying reasoning through those detailed explanations we just talked about. And ultimately, this drastically improves your performance under pressure. Remember, a lot of candidates actually know the tech, but they fail because of terrible time management or a bad exam strategy. Consistent practice is what builds that essential exam day confidence.
Let's transition now to our final section, Section 5, Real-World Career Benefits and Their Absolute Practical Value. Because look, at the end of the day, this isn't just about passing a test and getting a badge. It's about what happens on Monday morning at your job. Employers can spot the difference a mile away between someone who crammed a bunch of theory and someone who practically prepared for the role. By mastering these exam scenarios, you are deeply learning Azure architecture, security principles, advanced networking, identity management, and automation. These are not just academic concepts to memorize for a day. This practical knowledge is exactly what enables you to drop in, contribute effectively to a company's cloud transformation, and drive real-world project success from day one. Plus, getting certified is basically an act of future-proofing your entire career. Cloud computing is evolving at breakneck speed, and Microsoft Azure is aggressively leading the charge in artificial intelligence, machine learning, cybersecurity, DevOps, the whole shebang. It is an incredibly exciting time for the industry. When you invest in a structured, practical preparation strategy right now, you are perfectly positioning yourself for long-term opportunities in a market that's only going to keep exploding. So I'm going to leave you with this one thought. Are you ready to stop just memorizing and start actually mastering the Azure cloud? The demand is there, the path is clear, and the tools are right there waiting for you. The only question left is, what are you going to build next?